Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to see all of you here this morning with us. We are in this series called AD and using the book of Acts, teaching through the book of Acts, and kind of following along the television series AD that's being shown on Sunday evenings. Hope you've been able to see that. Just really following along the story of the church. And our thought is, as you see up on the screen, that Easter really was just the beginning. We see it as the climax, and it's really not. That's the moment when God said, "I'm not finished with you all." And so we continue on, and what's the church supposed to be, and what's our call in this world, and how do we live out our faith? And so to let you know, this morning the message is a bit briefer than normal. It's really more of a devotional thought I want to leave with you. And in fact, I'm gonna tell you right now what's the point of the message. And so I'm gonna give that to you right now. So if you had a late Saturday night, if you're a little tired, you can take a nap after I share with you. The point of the message is, and I didn't set this up ahead of time with the announcement giver. The point of the message is that sometimes our plans don't always go as we think they will. But God still goes with us. God still loves us when we make a mess of things. You see the theme that I'm following along here? This really was not planned ahead of time. I didn't sabotage the little popsicle stick things. Although next week there will be, with you, greeting you in the morning, will be little clusters of ants. So you may want to watch that. We want everything to make sense. We want it to line up and to come out the way we had it planned. And life doesn't always go that way, does it? Life very seldom goes that way. There's the old story, the old joke that if you want to hear God laugh, tell him your plans and how they're all going to work out. And you'll hear God snicker. There's an old Japanese legend. And there was a man who wanted to learn the way of tea. Now, if you know anything about Japanese culture, the way of tea is a very formal ceremony and process. I've seen it done a number of times. And the way you drink the tea, and the way you present the tea, and the way it is given to people of higher status and stature, and then on down. It's a very formal process, and this young man wanted to learn the way of tea. And so he went to what was called the tea master, a leader who understood all of the formality and the process of the way of drinking, serving, etc. tea. And so the master said to the one who wanted to learn this process, said, "Well, first, I'd like you to clean up and take care of this garden." So the young man went out to the garden and he found it in just complete disarray. And so he spent hours and hours over the next few days raking the garden, tending the garden, getting the debris out of the garden, making sure that all of the rows were perfectly lined up, that the ground was level, that the plants were at the same height. He made sure, listen, he made sure that it was perfect and looked pristine. However, before he left the garden to go to the master, the one that was going to teach him, he took a branch that was hanging over the garden and he shook it so that a few small sticks and some leaves and a few flowers fell into the garden that he had just lined up perfectly. The idea behind it was, he said to the master, nothing is perfect. And I wanted to show you, listen, I wanted to show you a garden that looked beautiful and was functional, but was imperfect. To this day, that is referred to as, here's the phrase, wabi-sabi. And it is a phrase that is used, here's the art, it is a phrase that is used to celebrate imperfection and to revere authenticity. Because a garden that is perfect and all lined up isn't really real. It's not life. If you want your life to be a garden that is all lined up and no weeds and perfect, someday that will happen for you when you're dead. Then there will be no more imperfection. There will be no more broken relationships. There will be no more disease. There will be no more weeds cropping up into your life. There will be no plan that you had that somehow got diverted because, well, you'll be done. But in this moment of life that you have now, tend your garden. Make the line straight. Take out as many weeds as you can. But understand, some sticks are going to fall. Some leaves are going to mess it up a little bit. And the story just simply is that you go back in and you tend it again. And you clean it up again. Because, my friends, that is life. To misquote a country and western song, Jesus never promised us a rose garden. And even if he did, roses have thorns. We want it all to make sense. We want it to line up and we want life to go in this linear fashion. We want all of our children to just be just right and don't divert all of that path. We even want our faith and our purpose to be linear and to go straight. No diversions. No disease, no struggles, no relational breakdown, no depression, no broken finances, no marriages falling apart. But in life, Jesus says, in life, you're going to have difficulties. The Bible word for that is tribulations. We just call it junk. In life, you're going to have junk. But Jesus says, when that junk occurs, remember that I'm still right there with you. That I'm still calling you to come forward with me. that I'm still there with you, trying to make a mark in you in the world. And it can be very inconvenient. Like this video. I'm going to show you a video. This is a little bit of a clip from this AD series. Sent it up very quickly. There's a man named Peter. He's one of the earlier leaders in the church. He was the one that was with Jesus and denied Jesus, and Jesus forgave him. And then he ran away, and Peter was just like, he was just like us. And then there's another man named Philip. And Philip and Peter were part of the early church, and they were called, and the church was going pretty well, and it was growing, and they were kind of branching out and making a difference. And then God does what God does. He just intervenes and just jumbles up all the plans. And that's the video that you're going to watch right now. The plans being jumbled up. And how do you respond when the plans are jumbled? So the words of Peter to Philip, you're doing really well. Things are going great. And then Philip gets this message, okay, now you need to go somewhere else. And it comes out of the blue. It's like God saying, okay, this is what you've been doing, and now it's time for you to move here. And Peter doesn't hear it. Philip does, but Peter doesn't hear it. Well, what's going to happen to him? Who's going to meet him on this road? Who would be there, and would he be accepted? You notice the word from the angel was, I just want you to go there. And then the angel disappears. That's what angels do. They tell you what to do, and then they go away. Well, yeah, but what's going to happen? Will it be successful? Will I understand why I'm there before I even go? God calls people to a mission, a purpose, and a plan, and it is always His plan. We want it to be our plan, and we want it to be our way, and we want it to all line up and to make sense. But God's plan doesn't always make sense to us. Call it whatever you will. It may not make sense in our finite vision. But God calls us to be renewed. God calls us to a new thing. In Psalm 51. Psalm 51 was written after David was confronted with his adultery. David had strayed from the path that God had called him to. And the path was simply faithfulness. Just be faithful. I'll lead you, but you be faithful. I will give you success, but you be faithful. I will make things happen, but you be faithful. David was not faithful. And so among Psalm 51, he writes these words of confession, verse 10. Create in me a pure heart, O God, and renew a strong spirit within me. Do not cast me from your presence. Do not take your Holy Spirit away from me. Restore to me the joy of salvation. And look at these words. And grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Those last words are the words that we often skip over because the front end is so beautiful. Create in me a pure heart, O God. Renew the strength of spirit within me. But it's the last words that make it all possible. Grant me a willing spirit to sustain me. Give me the strength to move forward Give me the ability to stay the course when my spirit doesn't want to. Paul had his thorn in the flesh. Paul, the Bible says, prayed to God. I prayed to you, God. I prayed and I prayed and I prayed. Take away this pain. Take away this struggle. Take away this thorn. What is this thorn? We never know what this thorn is. But 3 times God responds, no. But I'll give you strength to stay the course. I refer to that as Paul's scar. I grew up in a family with 5 brothers. We had a wing of a hospital named after us. One time we counted up broken bones in our family. I had 7 before I graduated high school. There was one time when I cracked my skull. No comments. There was one time I cracked my skull, went to the hospital, had it sewn up, I don't know, 10 stitches, something sewn up. And a couple weeks later, at that time, as I recall, remember I cracked my skull. So as I recall, the stitches came out. A day later, I cracked my skull again. The same place. Both times were the fault of my evil, sadistic brothers. My father did not want to take me to the hospital because they thought they would be arrested for beating the children. That was my fault. Scars remain. And some of you have scars inside. Some of you have scars inside that you could go back to elementary school and you can hear the words of somebody saying something to you that it still hurts. Some of you have been scarred by the 2 people that were supposed to love you and protect you the most, parents. Some of you have been scarred by the person that said, I will stay with you forever. Some of you have been scarred by children that have taken a path that's wounded you deeply. And we must be honest. Some of the scars that we have are self-inflicted. It could be that you have prayed 3 times like Paul, or more than 3 times. Take away this thorn. Take away this wound. And God may have said, no. But I'll heal the wound. And I'll walk with you through the pain. But the scar will remain. And for you and for me, listen carefully, and for you and for me, that scar could be the most beautiful part of your life. Because it reminds you how precious life is. It will not feel like it, and even as I say it out loud, you may recoil that scar and that wound may come to be one of the most beautiful, perhaps the word is most powerful part of your life. Because next time maybe you won't scar a person. Or next time you won't allow a person to scar you. Or next time you will remember what it felt like and you will reach out and you will care for the person that is being scarred. This is what I hope our students learn in school. That the person who is being picked on, the person who is being bullied, the person who is being belittled, they are getting scarred. And I want our schools to stand up for it. We even sing songs that say, Lord, we are sweetly broken. Can we be honest? And in the moment of brokenness, it doesn't feel very sweet. But if God is anything, God is calling us to still follow Him, even when it feels scary, unsure, unfinished, disjointed. There are people that are called the Desert Fathers. And early in the first millennia, they were people who left society, and there were some mothers too. It was mostly men, but there were some desert mothers as well. And I have tremendous respect for them. Desert fathers would see society as so broken that they thought the only way of dealing with it was to leave it. Here's what's written about them in one book that I have. For the Desert Fathers, listen carefully. For the Desert Fathers, the flight to the desert was a way of escaping conformity to the world. The world, including the church, had become so dominated by secular materialism that for them, the only way to witness against it was to withdraw from it. Thomas Merton writes in his book called The Wisdom of the Desert, it's all about desert fathers. He writes these words: society was regarded by the desert fathers as a shipwreck from which each single individual person was to swim for their life. Now, listen very carefully to what I'm going to say. That last line. Society was regarded by an absolute shipwreck from which each single individual was to swim for their lives to get away from it. Here is my problem with the Desert Fathers. Isn't it precisely that brokenness that we are supposed to swim toward? Yes, I understand that we need time away. Yes, I understand that we need to seek healing in our own place. And yes, I understand that Jesus often sought time away from the craziness of life. But if it is true that society is a shipwreck, and most of us would agree that it's heading for the rocks right about now, are we, people of faith, not called to be the ones to enter into those crazy waves, to reach out and bring Christ's grace and truth and seek healing for ourselves and others? In other words, if it is a shipwreck and if the ship is going down, aren't we the ones that are supposed to save people? Aren't saved people called to save people? Rick, that's pretty nice, and it's very comforting to say, and it's very holy in a place like this. But when you are drowning, you are not heading toward the thing that's dragging you down. Right? The ship's going down, right? Women and children first, right? After I push them out of the way and make myself safe. But if you use it as the metaphor that I think it is, then the church is, listen, the church is the ark. And by some estimates, listen, by some estimates, it took Noah 50 to 75 years to build the ark. So for 50 to 75 years, he's saying to people, the storm is a coming. You gotta join us. Society's in trouble. Come in the boat with us. Bad things are going to happen. Please join us. And do you know how many people Noah saw as converts to his message? 0. But that didn't stop the message. Because God gave a promise. I'm still with you. I have great respect for the Desert Fathers and the wisdom that they have brought forward. Tremendous. But if society is the struggling place that we think it is, and I think we would agree it is, then if you're a person who follows Jesus, did Jesus run from the storm? Or did he go into it and say, follow me anyway? Here's the deal. We may not like, we may not even accept as valid certain lifestyles and choices that others in this broken world make. But we must accept the person as worthy of saving from the ship. Romans 5 verse 8 puts it this way. God demonstrates his love for us in this manner. While we were still sinners, Christ died for us. While the ship was still going down, Jesus came into the water to pull us out. While the boat was taking on waves, while there was a truck-sized hole in the hull, the church didn't say, let's get out of here. The church doesn't say, every person for themselves. The church says, if I'm with you and you're with me, then we can strengthen others together. We may not like, we may not accept choices others make. I may not like or accept choices you make. And you may not like choices I make. But if we are to make a difference in God's kingdom, then we do not flee the shipwreck of society. We listen for God's voice, and we go to make a difference, wherever that going is. That's why they always say, if you ever find a perfect church, don't join it, because you'll ruin it. The church is not a club for saints, but a collection of broken sinners who have been forgiven, taught how to swim, and then told, get out of the safety and go save another. I'm coming to a conclusion here. Some of you know the name Rick Warren. Rick Warren is a pastor of this little church out in Southern California. He struggles, but they're trying to do well. He calls me every once in a while for advice. I say, Rick, you got to find a new vocation. It's not happening for you. He's a pastor of a big old church out in Southern California. Not too many years ago, his father passed away, and they were pretty close, and it was a meaningful relationship. And Rick Warren, the pastor, tells a story of being at his father's bedside, and this was the man who just really taught him what it meant to be a person of faith. And as he was dying, as his father was dying, and Rick Warren is there and just listening, talking and praying. The last words his father said were the word. He said this to a pastor that has about 20,000 people in the church. Internationally known, written books that have been translated into more languages than I know ever will. A guy that has the success thing, right, just going. What's the last thing his father says to him? He looks at this son that has brought reams of people to faith. He looks at his son and he says these final words: win one more for Jesus. Win one more for Jesus. Not rest on your laurels, not take care of yourself, not just to this man that has a church of 20,000. That's good. Win one more. Philip didn't know where he was going, what he was doing. But the angel really was just saying, just go win one more. Well, where am I going to go? I don't know. Who's going to meet me there? Where am I going to get training? Is there money for this? And will my family care? And no, I'm just telling you to go. The church is not. Church is not a place to rest. It's a church, it's a place to receive rest and training and teaching. But then the church is supposed to say, okay, you can go. Win one for Jesus. But that has to be an intentional choice. We have to choose to be people of faith in the middle of a stormy life. It's hard. I want to just conclude with this story. Some of you may know this story. Let me just read it to you. Remember, we're talking about, the scars and struggles that we all carry, and yet God's still saying, I got a place for you to work. Yeah, but God, I'm just limping along in life. Sometimes when I think we say that, God might be saying, yeah, there are other people that are limping too. And maybe you can show them how to walk with a limp. With a sadness. There was a surgeon named Richard Seltzer. And Richard Seltzer had to perform surgery. Had to cut into the face of this beautiful young woman to remove a tumor. He cut into her face, did the best he could, but in the course of surgery, he severed a tiny twig of a facial nerve that controlled one of the muscles of her mouth. Her once stunningly beautiful face would remain grotesquely twisted and disfigurement for the rest of her life. Before the surgery, the author of the story shared, before the surgery, she had the kind of face that would sometimes cause people to stop and look because she was just so lovely. No one would ever do that again. If they stopped to look from that day on, it would be for another reason. One time, pause on that story. One time when I was living in Cincinnati, born and raised in Cincinnati years ago, attended the University of Cincinnati. I'll never forget, on the way to school, I stopped to get a cup of coffee because I had an 8 o'clock class. What was I thinking? Stopped to get a cup of coffee, went into this McDonald's and sat down for a few minutes, and a bus pulled up, these small, short buses, and a bunch of kids got out. 10, 15 kids. They just piled out. They were wild. They were laughing. I was trying to study, really. And I looked up. I tried to just continue to concentrate, and I looked up, and it was from the burn unit at the local hospital. These kids, from head to toe, had skin melted and so disfigured that they were monstrous. You understand why I'm using that word? And people, I watched people, and people looked and didn't look away. I saw one woman with her small child. I don't blame her. I understand. So one woman with her small child, maybe in the 5, 6 range, the child looked up and the child withdrew back from these wild kids who were just having the time of their lives. This little boy, as I recall, drew back, and the mother took her hand and put it over the eyes of the little boy so that he wouldn't recoil and maybe say something he shouldn't say. I've never forgotten that scene. But the way that we recoil in the face of brokenness. The trouble is we sometimes look in the mirror and we see brokenness and we recoil from it. Jesus didn't die to make you pretty. Jesus didn't die to give you a perfect body to put on a magazine cover. Jesus didn't die so that you would have perfect health. Jesus didn't die so that your relationships would all go well. Jesus didn't die so that people around you wouldn't die. Jesus died because you are broken and disfigured somewhere. So this woman was disfigured by the surgery. Her young husband was beside the bed in the hospital when she asked for a mirror. As she looked into it, she said to the doctor, "Will my face always look like this?" "Yes," he replied, "will, because the nerve is cut." She was silent, but her husband wasn't. Her husband smiled. He said, "I like it. It's kind of cute." And then, listen, and then, to add an exclamation point, he bent down to kiss her now crooked and disfigured mouth. Seltzer, the surgeon, wrote, "I am so close to them that I can see how he twists his own lips to accommodate hers to show her that their kiss still works." To show her that her kiss still works. God still kisses your disfigured life. And no matter what comes, no matter what wound or nerve of yours is broken, God will conform His kiss to fit the tenderness of your life. He still calls you, no matter where your brokenness is. And so I leave you with that. I leave you with, no matter where your brokenness is, no matter where your heart aches, no matter where your body is breaking down, no matter where your relationships or your finances are struggling, no matter what comes down the road, and the road may take you places you aren't sure of, and it may feel disfiguring, and it may feel broken. But if you will stay there and say, "Lord, will you kiss me with your grace?" And He will. Because grace fits any brokenness you can think. That's why we call it grace. Will you stand for the closing prayer? God demonstrates His love for us in this way, that while we were still sinners, Jesus gave His life for us. God, I pray for each person here, those that understand the depth of your love and the power of your grace, and those that are just exploring and seeking to understand what all of this means in their life. I pray, God, that you would take these words and the words of Scripture, these stories, the music that was shared, that you would mold us, you would mold this church, you would move us forward as individuals, and just, God, we would listen for your call, your truth, and your place in our lives. Heal us, God. Save us from this ship that sometimes feels like it's going down. But then God remind us that we are to care, and to reach, and to bring others to safety as well. Through the power of your grace in our lives, we pray. Amen.